We should probably do some sort of introduction. Like, hi, everybody. I'm Patricia.
I'm Lee.
And we're weird as fuck.
Yeah, I suppose you probably should, I guess so.
Yeah. Because someday we might be famous. Okay. So. Okay. Are you ready to re-record our location information for the Vile Vortices?
Yep.
Since it just turned out bad. It was just bad.
It was just a bad day.
It was a really bad day. And then today, of course, we've been sitting here for, a half an hour, 45 minutes now, trying to get our equipment to work.
Yep.
So today is going bangers as well. So, yeah. All right. So this is part 2 of Vile Vortices, the location episode. On location would be better.
Yep.
Go to any one of these places, except now, hurricane season, but... Alrighty, so in our last episode, we talked about what vile vortices were. So places of power, elevated electromagnetic power that theorists believe could have something to do with the existence of advanced civilizations and mysterious disappearances. And these vile vortices, Ivan T. Sanderson believed... He's the primary researcher who attributed his theory to that term. He believed that they occurred at the North Pole, the South Pole, and then 10 along the equatorial regions of the Earth. So 5 on the Tropic of Capricorn, 5 on the Tropic of Cancer. I don't know why I can't pronounce Capricorn properly. Just go with it. So Mr. Sanderson believed that it was due to natural phenomena that these areas of power caused issues with ship and plane navigational systems, forcing planes out of the sky, perhaps even forcing ships into shoals that wrecked them. But also that they may have aided advanced civilizations in building the great structures that they were well known for. So along the lines of the Egyptian pyramids and things of that nature.
More power.
Well, and it makes an odd sort of sense, I suppose. I'm obviously not an engineer, and I don't have a great deal of time studying electromagnetic phenomena. His theory was that it could potentially make it easier to move massive stones that were then used to build megaliths.
Yeah, I just don't understand how we haven't figured it out ourselves by now, if that's possible.
We're too busy trying to kill each other. It doesn't leave a lot of time for discovery.
Yeah, I guess.
We have a full social
each other
calendar.
back then, too.
We were, but on a smaller scale because there were fewer people. So, and, it's difficult to say, but think back to the stories of the Coral Castle in Florida. So this was a structure that was built by one man working at night without the aid of heavy equipment. He insisted on working alone. He didn't want to show anyone else what he was doing or how he was doing it. And he moved multi-ton blocks to build this structure. And then he died and didn't tell anybody how he did it. So we still have no idea.
All by himself.
All by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just bizarre.
Just wonder why the bastard wouldn't tell anybody else about it.
I don't know. Maybe he made a deal with the devil. Sold his soul to aliens.
Who knows?
I have no idea.
He sure the fuck wasn't going to tell anybody about it.
Send us your theories. We'd like to know what you think. All right. So again, there are 12 vile vortices. We're not going to cover much about the North and South Pole. Obviously, those are still pretty mysterious regions. We don't have a lot of building happening in those areas because of the climate. Although, as the South Pole thaws due to climate change, we're seeing more and more evidence that it wasn't always a frozen wasteland that there's a potential that there could have been a civilization there while it was still a warm region.
Yeah. So
fossils found there have shown us that it
froze over.
Yeah. Fossils found there have shown us that, several thousand years ago it was more temperate. So, who knows? Global warming could uncover secrets about our ancestors that we didn't even imagine. Well, except for the guys on Ancient Aliens. I don't think there's very much that they haven't imagined. But that's another story to be told at another time. So we're going to talk about today the 10 vile vortices that exist around the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer. Yeah, I can't say it. Shut up. I don't know why I can't say it.
You're always so well spoken.
Except when it comes to Capricorns. Capricorns. Also, I'm not from the Midwest, so I have no idea why it comes out that way. Moving on. Anywho, so I'm not going to go into super depth with any of these because that would be a 10-show series. There's a lot of information out there on some of these. On others, not as much. But I'll give you the Cliff's Notes versions because we've only got 30 minutes here.
Yep.
And then you can decide what you think. So, of course, the first one, and arguably the most famous, is the Bermuda Triangle.
Of course.
We've all heard about the Bermuda Triangle and the disappearances that are happening there or have happened there for hundreds of years. Even back as far as Columbus, we have reports of strange lights in the sky. And
aliens.
Well, you say aliens, but if it is the source of electromagnetic anomalies, that would make sense, right?
Yeah. Get the same thing at the North and South Pole. So.
Right. And, we have drones, obviously, that are out over the open waters. Well, maybe not over the open ocean, but unless they're connected to it. Well, if you're on a ship, you can launch a drone quite a ways and people wouldn't know that you were there. But back in, the 15th century, probably not a lot of drones flying around.
No, I don't think so.
I would imagine not. But there have been some really famous disappearances that have happened there. And of course, one of the biggest was Flight 19. And that was a training flight that took off from a military base in Florida. And the mission of that flight was to teach the students about dead reckoning. So if you were out and you were flying and your navigational equipment wasn't working properly, how do you find your way back home?
Do it the old school.
Which is incredibly ironic because they believe that it was the lack of fidelity in their navigational equipment that got them lost. So they reported, the flight instructor reported after, being out not terribly long, that his compass wasn't working properly. And other members of the flight were also complaining that their navigational equipment was malfunctioning. So this should have been a great time for them to have this lesson. But unfortunately, that's not the way that it worked. And they believe what happened was that rather than flying west, which would have taken them back over Florida and back to the base from which they launched, they instead flew east out over open ocean. And of course, when they ran out of fuel, there was very little hope that they were going to be able to make it back.
Somebody wasn't paying attention on their school testing.
Well, and, from all accounts, the flight instructor was a really well-respected flight instructor that had, hundreds of hours in the air. This should have been just basic for him. So why he was so confused is a great mystery. And of course, they did send out rescuers to try to find the flight and return them to the base. And one of those planes went down as well, which is, just adds to the legend a little bit. But that's a whole nother show that we could cover with just Flight 19 all by itself. And And of course, most of the rest of these as well. But there's also the Mary Celeste. So the Mary Celeste is a ghost ship that was discovered on 4 December 1872. So it goes back even further than Flight 19. And the ship itself was in excellent condition. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign that pirates had looted or raided, no sign of violence, no bodies, no evidence as to what actually happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste. What was noted was that we had one lifeboat that was missing. Now, historians believe what may have happened was that the crew was hauling a cargo of denatured alcohol. And as you might know, that denatured alcohol is nearly pure alcohol in most cases. So not the stuff that you would drink, although legend has it that sailors did try being sailors. It'll make you go blind and it'll kill you. So you really just don't want to. But what they believe may have happened to the Mary Celeste cargo is that one of the barrels sprung a leak. And in doing so, emitted vapors that made the hold toxic and dangerous. Denatured alcohol is incredibly flammable. And so what they believe may have happened is that the Mary Celeste crew took that lifeboat and tethered themselves to the ship and were being towed in the lifeboat while they waited for those vapors to sort of dissipate. And they somehow broke free. So imagine, if you will, the captain, his wife, his child, and the crew of the ship drifting about in a lifeboat. I would imagine that's probably a horrific story.
Yeah, you'd think they'd be able to find the lifeboat.
Not on the open ocean. The ocean's a big place.
Yeah, probably before the time when they had the little beacons and all that shit.
Yeah, well, 1872, so it was a long time ago.
Yeah, definitely way before that.
But no sign of the crew was ever found. Nothing. No empty lifeboat, no debris on the water, nothing. They were just gone. Then there's the Ellen Austin, the story of the Ellen Austin. In 1881, the 210-foot-long Ellen Austin was on her way to New York from London. One would think they wouldn't be in Bermuda, but because that's kind of, that one confused me. Why didn't they just take the northern route? But nobody asked me. But the Ellen Austin stumbled upon a derelict boat near the Bermuda Triangle. Everything seemed fine, but the crew was missing, just like the Mary Celeste. Captain Baker of the Ellen Austin was asked to observe the derelict for 2 days in order to make sure it wasn't a trap, because it wasn't uncommon for pirates to use bait ships to lure people in. Because during this time, if you salvaged a ship, you would be entitled to a portion of the proceeds from returning that ship. And if it had valuable cargo, that could be, you could cash in.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
So, a derelict ship out on the open ocean would be a tempting lure for somebody who was trying to profiteer. But they observed the ship. Nothing happened. So they moved in. But as they had decided to go in and investigate, a squall came up and separated the two ships, pushing the derelicts far away, like a day's sail away from the Ellen Austin. They decided that it was worth their while to go after it. So after several hours of heavy effort, the Ellen Austin caught up to the vessel, but found that no one was on board. The story suggests that a second attempt to bring her back to land ended up with the same fate before they finally abandoned the cursed vessel. So they tried to get on it, nothing. And then another squall came up and separated the boats, and they finally decided, you know what? This ship is cursed. It's not worth our time. So they let it go. So they let the ship go, and it just drifted off, never to be seen or heard from again. There's another story that's similar to that of the Carol Deering, often known as the ghost ship of the Outer Banks. The Carol Deering and several other vessels disappeared just off the coast of North Carolina. There were speculations that the Carol Deering was involved in rum running, but when the investigation team from Barbados reached the vessel, which had washed up on a shoal, after effort on rough seas, what they found was the ship was deserted, all crew members missing, along with their personal belongings, ship's navigational equipment, logbook, life rafts, among others. So that one's a little less, to me, a little less mysterious. They ran aground and they evacuated. Seems fairly clear-cut to me.
And then that probably went down somewhere.
But according to reports during the time, as many as 9 vessels went missing in the same area. Whether they all hit the shoals and ended up on the bottom, were overcome by pirates, or just simply vanished as part of the triangle's weird legacy is unknown. Then there's the USS Cyclops. It's one of the Navy's biggest fuel ships and marked the largest loss of life in the history of the U.S. Navy in a single incident. In March of 1918, this ship set out to sail from Brazil to Baltimore, right through the Bermuda Triangle, carrying 10,800 tons of manganese ore, with about 309 crew members on board. They set off on a fair day, and the first and only message from the ship indicated no sign of trouble. So they sailed off, all was well, until they were never seen or heard from again. Poof, they just vanished. An entire search of the area was put into action, but nothing was ever found. No remains of the ship, no crew members, no detritus, nothing. They just vanished into thin air. The captain of the Cyclops never sent out a distress signal. No one aboard responded to radio calls from other vessels in the vicinity, and naval investigators failed to find any definite cause for its appearance. There were a number of theories, including maybe they came upon foul weather, like a centralized storm. They sprung a leak. That's a lot of manganese ore. It's very heavy. If they hit rough seas, there's the potential that it could have caused the ship to break up.
Yeah.
But until we find the wreck, we'll never know. And as of this moment, 100 years later, nobody's ever found any sign of the Cyclops.
Big ass ship. Think they'd find something.
It's a very large ship, and you would think so, especially when we know where the Cyclops was going. We know its path, we know what direction it was traveling, the whole 9, but nobody's ever been able to find it. And you know that treasure hunters are out there looking for it. Even for ships that don't have quote unquote treasure on them, finding something like that's quite a feather in your cap.
Yeah.
And yet nothing.
Weird.
Very weird. Weird as fuck, one might say. All right. So that's the Bermuda Triangle, one of the best known. And of course, we know it because of all the weird stuff that happens within the Bermuda Triangle. Then there's Easter Island. It's also weird, but for different reasons. Now, you know about the Moai of Easter Island, those massive statues that look in from the ocean.
The big ass heads.
The big ass heads. Well, apparently those big ass heads have bodies too.
That just doesn't make any sense.
Well, it makes sense that they would partially bury the lower half of the statue to keep it upright, right?
Yeah, but why'd you waste all that fucking time?
Exactly. I mean,
making
just
it into a body when it's just going to be underground.
And it's not just a plain body either. They are carved as though they were people. So they've got tattoos, they've got hands, they've got legs, they've got little butts, the whole 9.
I could see them like sinking into the ground a ways, but not that far.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. The first time that I saw a story on Moai Legs, I thought, well, this is a spoof. Is this the Onion? Yeah. But it's not. It's not a spoof at all. They actually carved statues that were much larger than we thought they were. And for some reason, buried them into the ground. So the Rapa Nui people placed them there, but nobody knows really why or exactly how. There are 887 statues on Easter Island, and some of them are as much as 30 feet high and weigh in at about 80 tons.
It's a lot of weight.
Sorry, I thought you were going to yawn there for a second.
I was trying not to put it on the mic, so I kind of yawned inside my mouth. It was weird.
I'm that exciting, folks. My co-host is napping.
No, it's because I can't sleep for long enough.
It's also really warm in here.
Yes.
It's very toasty. It's always nice and toasty in here, which is not great when you're trying to record. I promise not to snore. So the Rapa Nui were fairly primitive people who were thought to have done this about 500 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. And engineers and scientists have been trying to figure out exactly how you move a 30-foot tall, 80-ton statue across an island over rugged terrain without cranes.
Vortice power.
Vortice power. Now, the Rapa Nui's legend says that they walk. And scientists have tried using sledges. They've tried using logs, rolling them along the logs.
Yeah.
And just moving the log from the back to the front. Ignoring entirely the fact that those statues would press those logs into the ground and they wouldn't fucking go anywhere. But hey, you keep it up, guys.
It'll work.
Brainstorm. It doesn't have to be right. Just, try to move it along. One method that scientists and engineers did find to be somewhat effective was to have 3 teams, one to the left, one to the right, and one to the rear of the statue. The one to the rear of the statue stabilized it to keep it from rocking forward. No idea how they kept it from rocking backwards, but apparently you're not supposed to think about that. The ones on the left and the right would then take turns heaving on ropes tied around the neck area of the statue, sort of wobbling it. So if you can imagine a giant stone weeble, remember those weebles that we used to play with when we were kids?
Yeah, and the only way that would work is if it was perfectly flat ground.
Right, and they did conduct their experiment with a 10-foot tall statue on flat ground for everyone to see. And this was on a hard-packed path. It's not on, like I said, rugged, uneven terrain that's likely to compress as the statue is moving. Now, here's a little bit of white trashiness for everyone who's listening. We got a drone stuck in the plane in a drone airplane stuck in a tree in front of our house. And the ground was really uneven and we didn't have a ladder tall enough to get to the drone. So I drove my Suburban onto the lawn, much to the delight of the neighbors. And I stood on top of the Suburban to reach the drone. My Suburban was roughly 4 tons. So much, much lighter than any of the Moai, and it sunk into the ground. I had tire tracks that I had to go and fill in my front yard. It was very, very trashy. And that was just a stable vehicle with 4-wheel drive.
And rubber tires.
That
Yes.
have some give. And, it was during the dry season, so the ground was fairly compact. But so I have a really hard time envisioning how you would not only perform the same function with an 80-foot tall statue, but then angle it into a perfectly, dug hole for it, fill in the ground around it, and then place those little hats that some of them were wearing, which were also multi-ton, on top of its head, unless you had some advanced engineering knowledge.
Yeah.
And that fits into the idea of the vial. Yeah, he says as I cut him off. Sorry.
Well, there's a whole shitload of them. They're all on a hill.
Yeah.
And all their theories go to shit when you look at all the ones that are buried on the hills.
Right. And,
There's no way they could do any of that.
Exactly. I mean, it makes sense, like we said, moving them along a flat, hard-packed path. How do you get them uphill?
Or down.
Downhill is
into
easy.
a hole. And perfectly. It'd be easier, of course, but
It would be easier to slide it into the hole.
Difficult to do that.
But, most of the theories that are out there, yeah, you could apply it to some of them, but certainly not all of them. And even the ones that you can apply it to, there are holes in the theory that common sense just demands answers for. But the theory that the vial vortices allow you to use the natural electromagnetic field to maybe dampen the power of gravity, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, they said that they can make heavy objects hover over ground. So, but how they did it, who knows?
Well, and was that a euphemism? Is it just a bad translation of we were able to use this device to make things slide a little bit more easily? Or were they speaking literally?
And then, of course, everybody thinks it's aliens.
Of course. And then there's the alien theory.
Aliens built so much shit around here. So, but they haven't ever built anything since, so why is that?
Well, and it is a convincing theory. I mean, it's a simplistic theory just to be able to say it's aliens. It's, it's pointing the finger to the thing that you can't prove or disprove. You cannot disprove that aliens came here, but you can't prove it either, which is exactly what conspiracy theorists love. The more you try to disprove it, the more they can say, see, that validates my theory. Well, no, it doesn't, asshole. Until I see a craft hovering over Easter Island with a candy claw that comes down and moves the Easter Island statues, I'm going to believe that our ancient ancestors were just more technologically savvy than we give them credit for.
Yep, more than us now.
That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. So that's the end of part 2. We're covering the first group of our vial vortices. And next week, tune in where we'll finish it out and see if we can figure out with our limited scientific knowledge what could be causing issues with your navigation system when you drive through the Bermuda Triangle. Well, don't try to drive through the Bermuda Triangle to water. Sail. Don't sail. Just stay away from it. Really, seriously, just stay away.
Just get the fuck out.
And as with all of our episodes, you can find the details on where we got our information and links that'll take you there if you want to investigate more on our website at www.weirdasfck.com. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Want to stay connected between shows? You can find us on Instagram at WeirdAsFCKPodcast, on Twitter at WeirdAsFuckPod1, on Facebook at WeirdAsFCKPodcast. Send us an email at weirdasfckkpodcast@gmail.com, or come on over to our website at www.weirdasfck.com. There you can check out our blog, pick up some merch, look over our sources, and even share your weird experiences. You might even make it on a future episode. We would love to hear from you. Until then, tune in and keep it weird.